Emma Mijas died a horrible and painful death unnecessarily on her very first Christmas Eve 2004 at the hands of 25 doctors and nurses, another victim of medical malpractice. All 25 doctors and nurses systematically administered the wrong drugs for her life-threatening condition called SLOS. SLOS, Smith-Lemli-Optis syndrome, is a congenital abnormality which requires treatment strategies on supplying supplemental cholesterol. They gave Emma the wrong drug, Questran, not once, but 92 times. Yes, 92 times in 1 month. A cholesterol-reducing drug, not the cholesterol supplemental drug she needed. All of them knew better. They were trained to know better. They were some of the world's leading authorities at the Louisiana State University Health Science Center in New Orleans. But they just didn't give a damn about Emma's life. In 2013, the prestigious Journal of Patient Safety published a study that as many as 440,000 patients die each year from preventable medical errors. That would make medical errors the third leading cause of death in America, behind heart disease and cancer, which is second. These people are not dying from the illnesses that caused them to seek hospital care in the first place. No, they are dying from mistakes that hospitals could have prevented. What are these fatal errors? Who are these incompetent and negligent doctors? A New England Journal of Medicine, January 28, 2016 study reported that 1% of physicians accounted for 32% of paid malpractice claims over the last 10 years. The ugly truth is that little is being done to hold these dangerous doctors accountable. Researchers found that bad doctors showed distinctive characteristics, including having paid previous malpractice claims. So it stands to reason that healthcare providers could eliminate 1/3 of medical malpractice along with patients' pain and suffering, as well as the added cost of corrective surgeries, long-term care, and indemnity payments by removing the worst 1% of doctors. Why aren't bad doctors stopped from practicing? The answer lies, at least partially, in the National Practitioner Data Bank, a clearinghouse for information on medical malpractice that Congress established in 1986 to help state licensing boards police the healthcare industry. The national database was supposed to help states identify dangerous doctors and prevent them from harming more patients, and is used by hospitals, insurers, and licensing boards to track doctors' records, check prospective hires, and make other decisions. But it is virtually useless in holding doctors accountable because, by federal law, none are listed by name. They are assigned a random number to protect their identities. Even if doctors were identified in the data as they should be, the public would still be barred by law from accessing the records. So vulnerable, sick patients sit in the waiting rooms of bad physicians without a clue about their poor record of performance. And in many cases, a negligent doctor's insurance company pays the victim of malpractice and the doctor goes back to work. If a doctor develops a bad enough reputation in one town, he can move to a new state and continue practicing. This is unbelievable. But today, the public does not have access to the database to identify doctors' names and addresses, to identify doctors with uniquely long histories of being sued or disciplined for medical malpractice. Because on September 1st, 2011, the government cut off public access. What was behind that decision? Apparently, one Kansas doctor with a trail of malpractice suits, Dr. Robert Tenney. The Kansas-based doctor complained to the Government Health Resources and Service Administration that the Kansas City Star newspaper was publishing the story of one of his patients, Mary Beth Chase, who died in 2007 after undergoing a brain surgery with Dr. Tenney. It is also noted that Tenney has been sued at least 16 times for medical malpractice, but had never been disciplined by the state's licensing boards. The Insider Exclusive produced a TV story on this case with the lawyers who represented Mary Beth's family when doctors go bad, Mary Beth Chase versus Dr. Robert T. Tenney. Tenney finally settled the Chase family's wrongful death suit for $1 million. The settlement brought total malpractice payments paid on Tenney's behalf since the early 1990s to roughly $3.7 million. In some states, including California, Colorado, Georgia, and New York, patients can go to medical boards' websites to find out about doctors' malpractice histories, but not in Kansas and Missouri. Why don't doctors report on bad doctors? Physicians often see the mistakes made by their peers, which puts them in a sticky ethical situation. Should they tell the patient about a mistake made by a different doctor? Too often they don't. Why not? One reason is that doctors depend on each other for business. So a physician who breaks the code of silence may become known as an informer or snitch and lose referrals, a financial penalty. Doctors also may be wary of becoming entangled in a medical malpractice case or causing a colleague to face legal consequences. The bottom line, too often doctors aren't learning from errors, nor are patients getting the information they need to receive proper treatment or compensation when the outcome is harmful. In this Insider Exclusive Network TV special, Justice in America, Cristina Rodriguez's story, we visit with Mark Mueller, founder at Mueller Law Offices, and Veronica Diaz, Cristina Rodriguez's mother, as we take you inside today's legal system, examining Mark's brilliant legal strategies, the legal challenges his firm faced in prosecuting this case, and in vivid detail showing you the heartbreaking stories of cases like Cristina Rodriguez. The jury awarded a total of $59 million, which was later settled for the largest settlement of its kind in medical malpractice cases in the history of Texas. Here's Veronica Diaz to share the heartbreaking story of her daughter, Cristina.
My daughter, Cristina, means the world to me. She's my little piece of heaven here on earth, my inspiration. And, I've seen her since, obviously, go through very hard times with her through this condition she does have. And but she's my little angel. It's been very hard on us, with her condition. And you go through a lot of stages of anger. And there's many stages that we go through having a child who's disabled. But it's very hard on the family. What I have to say to everyone is that, doctors are not always right. People make mistakes and nurses make mistakes. And, it's very important that you look at your surroundings and ask questions. What I would tell the company that permanently injured my daughter would be that, they have caused great damage on our family. My daughter will never have a normal life. I will never hear her speak, nor walk, nor talk. And, it's very hard to live with that, with knowing that what if, the what ifs of knowing what your child would be like, if we wouldn't have had this medical negligence case and stuff. My daughter would have been normal.
This is the Insider Exclusive, live from Austin, Texas. It is my great pleasure to introduce a good friend of mine and a great lawyer, Mark Mueller, to the show. Welcome to the show, Mark.
Thanks, Steve.
Tell our audience a little bit about your firm. What type of law do you practice and why?
Well, the kind of law we practice changes. It depends on where the need is at the time, I guess you could say. I did criminal cases when I first started out of law school. I did some personal injury cases, and then I got into malpractice, medical malpractice, and did that exclusively, almost all birth injury type cases, neurological cases, for 25 or so years, until Texas legislature took that away and made it not worth doing for the client. And I always saw myself as a person that would be helping out people that were pinned down by the government or didn't have a chance, that kind of stuff. Always wanted to be that way. And so I've just kind of followed my interests, and that's what I do now. We're shifting from malpractice to products liability cases to water contamination cases. We do whistleblower key 10 type cases, particularly in the East Coast.
Today we are here talking about one of your cases, the Cristina Rodriguez case, which I understand was the largest verdict for medical malpractice in the state of Texas, in the history of Texas, when it was done, correct?
That's right.
Tell our audience a little bit about this case and the facts and how you won it.
When I got the case, it had been turned down by several lawyers. A badly injured child. Why was it turned down? It was turned down in large part because this was a county hospital. And in Texas, a county hospital had an absolute limit that they could ever have to pay of $100,000. Mm-hmm. And so in this case, the child was terribly brain damaged, had $700,000 or $800,000 in medical bills itself by the time she even came to us. So we had a doctor that was the other possible defendant that had died before the case, and he only had $200,000 in insurance. Now those we call Texas specials, those low limits kind of thing, not enough money to help out, not enough money for that kind of case. So it was a case that we was looking at, what do we do? This family was really in tough shape. You know, this was a kid that's going to need care the rest of their life, devastating situation. And the care was not good. What do we do? And so I looked at every possibility. I looked at, was there a radiologist in the prenatal period that did something wrong and telephoned it in, and what happened? I always try to figure out what happened in the case. Mm-hmm. I always want to be on the right side of things. I want to feel like I've got the right case, the right facts. Maybe they're a little hard to discover, but I want to be on the right side, because otherwise I just don't have the motivation to go after it the same way. So this one, I love the family, and I wanted to help them. And we were about ready to give up. We had looked everywhere, researched, burned everybody out, trying to find things. And finally we stumbled onto something called negligent undertaking theory that is listed in what's called the restatement of torts. Lawyers know what that is, but a lot of people haven't looked at that. And if you're not a lawyer, you'd have no idea. But it's a book about all sorts of different evolutions of law and permutations of law, and what kinds of things have been done in certain states and certain areas, and what could be done in a case that might have similar facts. So we found this theory, negligent undertaking, which was sort of a hybrid of contract and torts. And it was based upon undertaking a duty. And then not performing it properly opens you up to potentially tort liability as opposed to contract liability. So it had never been done in this kind of a case before. But we thought, well, this kind of fits. It was a small hospital and they needed help. And so they were reaching out to try to be purchased or do a merger, or, they wanted to upgrade their capabilities. This was a remote rural hospital near the Texas border. So they were having a tough go at it. And they brought in a management company that told them they could get this hospital up and running and get the care top notch. And I think what it was really about that's what the town wanted, the county wanted. I think the management company was more interested in how much they could up the billing for this. And I'm being maybe a little cynical, but that's, go, why are they down there? What's this all about? So we took the case on. Now, to do that, a negligent undertaking case, it's more complicated than just, was somebody negligent? Did they cause the injury? What are the damages? And that's hard enough, as you know from the tort cases. It's very difficult. But negligent undertaking means you've got to show a duty, reliance upon a duty, that the employees of the party we're going to sue are not borrowed employees, that they haven't waived something. I mean, we had to go through this whole line of questions that had to be answered before we even get to, did it cause injury? Was it, what were the numbers? So that's where we started off. And when we filed the case, the defendant said, "You must be crazy. You have no chance. This is ridiculous. No one's ever done this before. We're going to file motions to dismiss." And the next thing we knew, there were lawyers, filing scary motions. I mean, the scary motions. This is ridiculous. We want sanctions and we want penalties, and we're going to dismiss your case and we're going to sue you for doing this to us, etc. So we endured that for a long time. So a lot of the case was fought pre-trial on legal issues. We wanted to get to court and at least have a chance. And then we knew once we were in court, it was a whole nother ball game. It was still going to be difficult, but just getting there was the battle.
And what was the smoking gun?
Causation in the case was heavily contested. There appeared not to be anything dramatic going on during the labor. Heart rate of the baby was up a little bit. But it wasn't quite as dramatic as what you'd expect. The time the baby was born loss of anemic, very, very not in good condition, floppy, barely alive. So something happened, but when? So I went to look at, this actually looked at the billing records of the mom to go, is there something I'm missing here? I mean, this company was brought in, I know, to improve the bottom line. So, well, maybe we can find something that leads us to something else that was ordered but not done, or overbilled just for fun and profit. And I should tell you that the labor and delivery was listed as normal all the way through, except for just a little bit of bleeding. When I looked at the billing records, I saw a category for pads and these blue things. I call them blue things. And I was expecting to be billed for 1 or 2 or 3 maybe, because
it said scant bleeding.
Scant bleeding. So I'm like, scant. Maybe they changed them once, And what happened with this? So, well, guess what? 24 of the big blue ones, 36 of the white Chuck's pads. Right. That's a lot of blood. And so that itself was very much of the key. It was a very visual piece of the case. Cross-examine the nurse. Are the billing records correct? And yes, pulled them out one. Is this what it looked like? One at a time. Stacked it up like this.
Right. And the jury's watching.
The jury's watching this. And then now all of a sudden when we'd done that, we knew why the baby was anemic at the time of birth. And it was happening right in front of them. So it wasn't necessarily some fetal monitor stuff. It was actual bleeding, basic stuff, which tied into our theory of the hospital was the management company was supposed to upgrade the hospital, improve training, get the hospital up to where they could get accredited. And so we wanted to make it that this was basic nursing. Not any kind of highly technical, oh my God, they didn't go to some, advanced college in Pennsylvania to learn about little wiggles in the strip. This is basic. She basically bled to death in front of them. Okay, and they charged her for it.
How long was the jury out for?
It seemed like forever. And then when the jury came back the first time, they do the whole hand it up to the judge and all stuff. The judge looks at it. Judge shakes his head and sends him back again. We don't know what happened. We don't know what's going on. And he's not telling us either. So they come back again after maybe 30 minutes or so. And the judge looks at it again, and he shakes his head again, tells them to go back. And they come back again. Now, remember that they had to answer several questions before they got to numbers. We don't have any idea what they're doing. We spent, I don't know, $750,000 on the case with very little offered to us. We've got a pregnant mom at the trial. It was ratcheting up a little bit. They came back again. The judge looked at it and said, okay. And so then they read the numbers. First, it was all the predicate questions. Yes, did they undertake? Yes, was it relied upon? All those kind of questions. And then came the numbers, and it was 10 million for this, for past pain, 10 million for future, 10 million for this past, and it ended up being $59 million.
Which was the largest medical malpractice verdict at the time.
It was at the time, and yes, it was. It was a great feeling to have that happen.
What was the other side's reaction? I'm just curious.
They were floored, and they were good lawyers, and I'd actually done a case against them a couple of years before that, and they'd won. And so they were hired, I think, because they had won this case before. And I was the guy thinking I was going to win that other one. So this was kind of it was like a perfect redemption situation.
So eventually the case was, you got a $59 million verdict.
Yeah.
It was settled.
Yes.
It
was settled for $31 million. And at $31 million, the judge took off the punitive damages, so it was down into the 40s. Yeah. And so we settled for 31 just before the appellate court was ready to make a decision. But that took a couple years.
We are fortunate today to have Cristina's mom here, Veronica Diaz. So we're going to bring her on right now. It is my great pleasure to introduce Veronica Diaz to the show. Welcome to the show, Veronica.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much.
So take us back a few years when your daughter was born. Mm-hmm. What were your immediate thoughts about something might have gone wrong? When did you start figuring out that, hey, maybe the hospital and the doctors screwed up?
I think it was pretty much, right off the bat, when nurses and doctors were coming into my room and letting me know that there was some type of problem with my daughter.
They were actually saying that?
Once I delivered Cristina, the pediatricians came by and told me that they were going to have to fly her out, right, because she was very critical. But and at that time I knew she had pretty much complications. They told me they weren't sure if she was going to make it.
A lot of people might think, well, that's God's design, right? When did you start suspecting that maybe it wasn't his design?
Pretty much. I had a normal pregnancy all the way through. I had no problems whatsoever. Everything was normal just till that day of my delivery that I started with hemorrhaging and bleeding actually in the beginning. And then that day was when I noticed, I started having those complications. But to me, everything was normal. I was 18 years old.
When you suspected that something went wrong at the hospital, you went to a number of lawyers and they turned down your case. Yes. How did you end up with Mark?
Well, actually with Mark, after, talking and trying to see if somebody would take a look at our case, my mom was actually going through some newspaper clips and I answered a questionnaire, right, Mark had on the paper, and it talked about how if your daughter, had problems and just questions, and everything was yes. Everything on that newspaper clip was yes. And actually from then I contacted Mark and, asked him if he would take a look at our case and, to see if we would have something.
Yeah. What do you think about the justice system, how it worked for you?
Well, I think there's no price, of course. And, having a daughter or who's disabled and out of, medical negligence from the doctors. So, to me, it's like, doesn't matter, any amount you win or you get, my daughter will be disabled forever.
What do you think about when Mark was suing the hospital, the doctors, et cetera, and their excuses why it wasn't their fault? What do you think about that?
Well, I think Mark did a great job, right, in presenting our case. I feel that, of course, the hospital had a lot to do with it and their negligence, and more now me as a nurse and me working that role, as I feel that looking back at my days back then, that I didn't have pretty much communication with any of the nurses. Everything was all right, you know. And I feel that the hospital had a lot to do with it and the care I received.
You are a nurse right now, correct?
Yes.
When you see something that goes wrong in a hospital, what do you do?
Actually, I've had many people tell me, why are you so compassionate and stuff? And it's like I've been on that side of a patient. So I like to take my time and take care of them and listen to what the patient has to say. Because to me, that's very important. And, they always tell me that.
What do you have to say to the public out there about watching out for medical care, making sure that the doctors and nurses, the hospital do the right thing?
I think always ask questions. Yeah, I think it's very important that either husband, family ask questions to the doctors, to the nurses. And if for some reason someone is not doing their job, then, go hire and speak to somebody else, because, someone that has to listen, and there's a change of command that there has to, that they have to follow. So it's very important that if they see nothing is getting done, that, they have to speak.
Right. Anything else you want to add to, going through this whole experience of yours that people should be aware of when they work with it, go for treatment at a hospital or a doctor?
I think well, the most important part would be just be aware, of what the doctor is doing, what the nurses are doing. Are you receiving the right proper care from your nurses and your doctors? How you're getting treated, as a patient.
In all the cases that I've done, the same thing is true, that money can help do certain things, but it doesn't ever, undo what's happened. I found that every one of my clients, especially in a birth injury case, always feels like it's their fault somehow. They always feel guilty. And the one thing I want to get through to them always, if I can, is that the money will not take care of the psychology, and it won't take care of your heart. And so please learn that it's not your fault. Get to where you can actually feel that way, so you can be a parent to your child without feeling guilty and having to be worried every single day that you're not good enough. And this is everyone I've ever seen always feels that way, like they could have done something different. Maybe they went to the wrong hospital. Maybe they didn't say the right thing. Maybe there's something wrong with them that they don't even know. It's a terrible burden. And so if we can do one thing, it's to get the clients to really truly believe that this all happened for some kind of a reason, do the best they can, and that it's not them. And after they have the cry, it's a cry. Always a deep cry, one like they've never let themselves have. It tends to get better, but it's still hard work.
Great advice. I want to thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you.
A lot of people, Mark, when something bad happens at a hospital, start wondering, hey, what really went wrong? And they should be asking these kind of questions, because hospitals, doctors, nurses lie. Why do they lie? They're human beings, and they want to cover their tracks. So what is exactly the definition of medical malpractice?
Well, medical malpractice means doing something that is below the normal expected standard of care, so it's essentially just negligence. It's like running a red light in traffic, or leaving something on the floor that someone's going to trip over. So it's common negligence. But of course, in malpractice cases, you have to have an expert witness.
Yeah, and I was going to get to that in a minute, because if a case goes to trial, the defendants will line up their experts, you'll line up your experts, and it comes down to the jury believing who is really telling the truth. And the other problem with medical malpractice cases, obviously, is it is often difficult to get, as a plaintiff lawyer, an expert witness, because insurance companies will call up a hospital and it said, did you know that Dr. So-and-so is testifying against our doctor, this doctor, who's also covered with our insurance? And that's not a good thing. So they'll have a conversation. You know these things.
Oh, yeah.
They have a conversation with the expert doctor, and oftentimes he disappears or declines not to testify, which makes it tough to prove these cases.
Yeah, it does, and especially because hospitals now, so much of the hospitals are controlled by very few entities, and those entities, if they decide at a corporate level, doctors cannot testify in malpractice cases, they won't, and then you're already limited by in terms of what you can get. It's a hard business.
We discussed real briefly. 2003, Proposition 12 was passed in the state of Texas, as the same type of proposition has been passed in other states, limiting the amount of money, an injured party can recover from a doctor or a hospital. In the state of Texas, what is that limit right now?
The numbers that mean the most are the damages for what actually happened to the child. That's not a bill. That's not a dollar expense. Is $250,000.
When a lot of people have heard about you, you've gotten great verdicts, and you have potential clients call you all the time. How do you determine to take on a case?
If it interests me and I like the plaintiff and there's something I feel like it's my case, something I can do to help these people. A lot of times it's something where anybody else can do this case, and they should do it. Especially as I get older, you want to spend your time wisely. And so now I'm focusing more on sort of cause cases that I think will take on the systemic problems that I see in this country. And so that's where I'm spending most of my time now. But it's always kind of like when you ask me, what do you do? Well, it's changed over the years. But I kind of want to do what I'm interested in doing and what I think will make a difference. I'm on kind of a mission. I can't help it. I just can't help it. I want to see things get better. Yeah. I'm not happy with the way things are, and I know from talking to you, you're the same way. Right. You want to learn from your mistakes, you want to do better, and you feel compelled to be a decent human being. And I haven't always been a decent human being, but I want to be a better one, and I want to clean up things, and it's a mess right now.
Well, thank you, congratulations, and thanks for being on the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. You can get more information about our guest and the issues at insiderexclusive.com.